The first thing I remember is pain. Not physical pain, though there was plenty of that, judging by the bandages covering most of my body, but the deep hollow ache of a mind that had been scraped clean. It was like standing in a house where all the furniture had been removed, leaving only empty rooms and the ghost imprints of what used to be. The second thing I remember is his face. Even through the haze of whatever drugs were keeping me unconscious, even through the disorientation of waking up in a place I didn't recognize, I knew those eyes, storm gray, like the sky before thunder, framed by dark lashes that seemed almost unfair on a man. His face was all sharp angles and masculine beauty, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. I knew him. I was certain of it. My heart sang his name before my mind could even form it. Damien. He was sitting in a chair beside my bed, but when I spoke his name, he went perfectly still. For a moment, something flickered across his features. Surprise, maybe, or pain. Then his expression smoothed into careful neutrality. Like I've been hit by a truck. I managed, trying to sit up. My body protested every movement, muscles screaming in complaint. What happened to me? I found you in the woods 3 days ago, he said, leaning forward in his chair. You were unconscious, badly injured. No identification. No one reported you missing. I brought you here to recover. I looked around the room for the first time, taking in the rustic wooden walls, the stone fireplace, the comfortable but clearly masculine furniture. Where is here? My cabin, in the mountains outside Willowbrook. He studied my face carefully, those storm gray eyes searching for something. Do you remember anything? Your name? Where you came from? I tried to reach for memories, but it was like grasping at smoke. Everything before waking up in this bed was simply gone. Empty space where a life should be. I don't remember anything, I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. I don't even remember my own name. The doctor said memory loss wasn't uncommon with head injuries like yours. Damien said gently. It might come back in time. You called me something, I said suddenly, when you thought I was still unconscious. You called me Avalon, he finished quietly. You had a necklace with that name engraved on it. It's the only clue we have to your identity. Avalon. The name felt right on my tongue, familiar in a way that nothing else did. But it was just a word. It didn't unlock any memories, didn't shed light on the blank spaces in my mind. And you're Damien, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Again, that flicker of something in his eyes. Yes, I'm Damien Blackwood. Are we? I hesitated, unsure why my heart was racing. Do we know each other? I feel like I should know you. The silence stretched between us for several heartbeats. When he finally answered, his voice was carefully controlled. No, he said. We're strangers. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to help you. But even as he said the words, I knew he was lying. Not because I could remember anything specific, but because my body recognized him in ways that went beyond rational thought. When he reached out to check my pulse, my skin tingled under his touch. When he leaned closer to adjust my pillows, I caught his scent, pine and leather, and something uniquely masculine, and felt my wolf stir in response. Wait, my wolf? Damien went very still. What do you mean? Like there's a part of me that isn't entirely human. I looked at him searchingly. Am I losing my mind, or is that normal? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then slowly he nodded. You're a werewolf, Avalon. A shifter. The wolf you feel is your other half? The words should have shocked me. Should have seemed impossible, like something out of a fairy tale. Instead, they felt like missing pieces clicking into place. And you? I'm the alpha of the Blackwood pack, he said carefully. This is pack territory. That's probably why your wolf responds to me. She recognizes the hierarchy. That made sense, I supposed. But it didn't explain why looking at him made my chest tight, why his voice sent shivers down my spine, why every instinct I had was screaming that he was important to me in ways that went far beyond pack politics. "Will you help me?" I asked. "Help me figure out who I am? Where I belong?" Something painful flashed across his features before he could hide it. "Of course. You can stay here as long as you need to recover. But Avalon," he hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Don't push too hard to remember. Sometimes the mind forgets things for a reason." But Avalon was about to discover that some memories refuse to stay buried. Over the next few days, I began to piece together the fragments of what my life might have been like. I was a werewolf. That much was certain. When Damien showed me how to connect with my wolf, it felt as natural as breathing. She was there in my mind, a presence both fierce and gentle, though she seemed subdued somehow, wounded in the same way my memories were. I was powerful, Damien told me. My scent marked me as an alpha-born, someone from a strong bloodline with considerable supernatural abilities. But when I tried to shift, nothing happened. My wolf remained stubbornly human, as if she were protecting me from something. "It's probably the trauma," Damien explained as we walked through the forest behind his cabin. "Sometimes severe shock can temporarily block the ability to shift. It'll come back when you're ready." I nodded, trying not to feel disappointed. Everything about being in these woods felt right. The scent of pine and earth, the whisper of wind through the trees, the way moonlight filtered through the canopy above us. My wolf was restless here, pacing in the back of my mind like she wanted to run free. "Tell me about pack life," I said as we followed a winding path deeper into the forest. "Maybe it'll trigger something." Damien was quiet for a moment, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "Packs are like extended families," he said finally. "Everyone has a role, a place where they belong. The alpha leads, makes the hard decisions. Betas help maintain order and discipline. The megas are the heart of the pack. They keep everyone connected, help resolve conflicts through empathy and emotional intelligence." "What do you think I was?" He glanced at me, something unreadable in his expression. "Based on your scent and bearing, probably an alpha. You carry yourself like someone used to command, even without your memories. But not in your pack?" "No. If you'd been part of Blackwood pack, I would have known immediately." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Avalon, I need you to understand something. Pack bonds run deep. When someone goes missing, especially someone with alpha blood, it sends ripples through the supernatural community. The fact that no one has come looking for you, it suggests you might not have had a pack. A lone wolf? Or..." He hesitated, clearly reluctant to continue. "Or what?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Cast out. Banished. What could I have done that was so terrible my own family would abandon me? "Hey." Damien's hands were suddenly on my shoulders, his touch warm and steadying. "Don't go down that road. You don't know what happened, and torturing yourself with possibilities won't help." I looked up into his storm-gray eyes, and for a moment the world went very still. This close, I could see the flecks of silver in his irises, could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. My wolf stirred, pushing against the barriers in my mind, and I caught the faintest scent of something that made my heart race. "Damien," I whispered, not even sure what I was asking. His grip on my shoulders tightened, and I saw his pupils dilate. For a heartbeat, I thought he was going to kiss me. Every line of his body spoke of want, of barely restrained need. Then he stepped back so fast I nearly stumbled. "We should get back," he said roughly. "It's getting late." So I followed him back to the cabin in silence, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer and feelings I couldn't name. Not memories, exactly, but fragments. Images that felt real but made no sense. I was running through a forest, but not this one. The trees were different, older somehow. Ancient oaks and towering pines that seemed to touch the sky. I was afraid, not of the forest itself, but of something behind me, something that was chasing me, with intent to harm. And there was a voice, deep and familiar, calling my name, not Avalon. Something else. Something that felt more true than the name on my necklace. I woke with tears on my cheeks and Damien's voice still echoing in my ears. But when I tried to hold on to the dream, to examine it more closely, it slipped away like water through my fingers. What she didn't know was that Damien was fighting his own battle between truth and protection. The next morning, Damien was different. He was still kind, still attentive to my needs. But there was a careful distance in his manner that hadn't been there before. He avoided eye contact, kept physical contact to a minimum. And when I asked if everything was all right, he simply said he'd had a restless night. I knew he was lying. I could see it in the tension around his eyes, in the way his jaw tightened whenever I got too close. Something was bothering him, and I had the unsettling feeling it had to do with me. Maybe I should contact other packs? I said over breakfast, watching his reaction carefully. Ask if anyone knows me. Damien's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. That might not be the best idea. Why not? Because if you were banished, reaching out could put you in danger. Some packs, they don't forgive easily. And if I wasn't banished, if I have family out there wondering what happened to me, he set his mug down with deliberate care. Then they would have found you by now. Pack bonds aren't easily broken. Avalon. If someone loved you, if someone was looking for you, your disappearance would have sent shockwaves through the supernatural community. The word stung, even though I knew he was probably right. But there was something in his tone, a finality that suggested he knew more than he was telling me. You're hiding something from me, I said quietly. I'm protecting you, he replied, meeting my eyes for the first time that morning. Sometimes that's the same thing. Protecting me from what? From truths that might hurt more than help. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Avalon, you came to me broken in more ways than just physical. Whatever happened to you before you lost your memory, it was traumatic enough that your mind chose to forget. Maybe you should trust that choice. So I should just accept being a blank slate for the rest of my life? I'm saying, maybe the woman you're becoming is better than the woman you were. The words were meant to be comforting. I could tell, but they felt wrong. Like he was asking me to abandon part of myself without even knowing what I was giving up. I'm going for a walk, I said, standing abruptly. Avalon. Alone, I added firmly. I needed space to think, to process the growing certainty that Damien was keeping secrets from me, important ones. The forest behind the cabin was vast, full of winding trails that seemed to lead deeper into the mountains. I let my feet choose the path, following my wolf's instincts rather than any conscious plan. After about an hour of walking, I found myself in a clearing I didn't remember passing through before. It was beautiful, a perfect circle of grass, surrounded by towering evergreens, with a small stream running along one side. But it was also familiar. I stood in the center of the clearing, turning slowly, and felt recognition tug at the edges of my consciousness. I'd been here before, not just once, but many times. I knew you'd find this place eventually. I spun around to find a woman emerging from the trees. She was elderly, with silver hair braided down her back, and eyes the color of deep forest shadows. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who spent most of her time in wolf form, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. Who are you? I asked, though my wolf was already answering. Elder, pack matriarch. Someone important. My name is Elena Shadowmere, she said, approaching slowly, with her hands visible. I was wondering when you'd remember enough to come looking for answers. You know me. I know what was done to you. She stopped a few feet away, her ancient eyes sad. The question is, child, do you want to know the truth? Or are you content to live in the lie that handsome Alpha has built for you? My heart started racing. What lie? The lie that you're strangers. the lie that he found you by chance. The lie that your memory loss was accidental. Elena's voice was gentle, but implacable. Damien Blackwood knows exactly who you are. Avalon Nightshade. He knows because he's the reason you wanted to forget. The name hit me like lightning. Nightshade. Not the random name from a necklace, but my real surname. My family name. How do you know all this? Because I was there when you begged the witches to take your memories away. I was there when you chose oblivion over the pain of his rejection. Elena's eyes were kind but unforgiving. I was there when Damien Blackwood broke your heart so thoroughly that you'd rather lose yourself than remember loving him. The world tilted around me. Rejection. That's what this was about. Not strangers helping strangers, but the aftermath of a love story gone wrong. He rejected me? At the Moonlight ceremony, in front of both your packs. You were fated mates, true mates, blessed by the moon goddess herself. But Damien chose duty over love, politics over his heart. Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You were devastated, humiliated, and when he tried to explain, tried to make you understand why he couldn't accept the bond. I ran, you ran, straight to the witch's cottage, demanding they take the pain away. And they did, child. They took all of it, the love, the heartbreak, the memories of what you meant to each other. I sank to my knees in the grass, overwhelmed by the weight of revelation. Everything made sense now. The way Damien looked at me, the careful distance he maintained, the guilt in his eyes. Why? I whispered. Why did he reject me if we were meant to be together? Elena knelt beside me, her weathered hand gentle on my shoulder. Because his pack was at war with yours. Because accepting you as his mate would have meant choosing sides in a conflict that had been brewing for generations. Because he was young and foolish and thought duty was more important than love. And now? I thought of the past few days, of the careful way Damien treated me, the pain that flickered in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. He was protecting me, just as he'd said, but he was also protecting himself from having to face what he'd done. What do I do now? I asked. That depends, Elena said. Do you want your memories back? All of them, including the pain. I considered the question carefully. For days, I'd been desperate to remember, to understand who I was and where I came from. But now, knowing what those memories contained, like nothing you've ever experienced, Elena said honestly, but it will also show you the truth of what you felt for each other, the depth of love that made his rejection so devastating, and perhaps it will help you understand whether that love is worth fighting for. I thought of Damien's storm gray eyes, of the way my heart raced every time he touched me, of the recognition that hummed between us even without memories to explain it. Yes, I said finally. I want to remember. All of it. Elena nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. Then close your eyes, Avalon Nightshade, and let me show you who you really are. The memory spell was beginning to crack, and with it everything Damien had built to keep her safe. The memories hit me like a tidal wave, fast and brutal and completely overwhelming. I was 12, running through the Nightshade territory, with my pack siblings, learning to hunt and fight and lead. My wolf was strong even then, larger than most she-wolves, with a coat the color of moonlight on snow. I was 16, attending my first interpack gathering, and locking eyes with a young alpha across the ceremonial fire. Damien Blackwood, heir to one of the most powerful packs in the region, beautiful and confident and completely out of my league. The mate bond snapped into place the moment our eyes met, but he looked away so fast I thought I'd imagined it. I was 18, sneaking away from pack duties to meet him in secret, clearings like the one where Elena had found me, stolen kisses under starlight, whispered promises, dreams of a future where pack politics didn't matter, and love was enough to bridge any divide. I was 20, standing before the combined councils of both our packs, as the moon goddess herself confirmed what we'd known for years. We were true mates, blessed by lunar magic and destined to rule together. I'm sorry, Avalon. I can't accept this bond. Why? I whispered, my wolf howling in anguish inside my chest. Because my duty is to my pack first. And right now, my pack needs strategic alliances, not a mate bond that will force us to choose sides in a war we didn't start. The war. I remembered now, the conflict that had been brewing between the Nightshade pack and the rival Thornfield pack over territorial boundaries. My acceptance as Damien's mate would have forced Blackwood pack to ally with mine, dragging them into a fight that wasn't theirs. He chose his pack over me, duty over love, politics over the sacred bond the moon goddess herself had blessed. And I shattered. The memories of the days after were a blur of pain and rage and desperate grief. I'd thrown myself into the war effort, leading raids against Thornfield with reckless fury. My wolf had been wild, barely controlled, driven by the agony of rejection, until finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Please, I begged the witches in their cottage deep in the neutral territory. Take it away. Take all of it. I can't live with this pain anymore. Memory magic comes with a price. The eldest witch warned. Take away the bad and you lose the good as well. Love and heartbreak are two sides of the same coin. I don't care. I just wanted to stop hurting. And they had granted my wish. Stripped away not just the pain of rejection, but every memory of Damien, every moment of happiness we'd shared. They'd left me hollow, empty, a shell of who I'd been. The spell was meant to be permanent, but now, sitting in Elena's presence with magic flowing through me like electricity, I understood why it had started to break down. True mate bonds weren't so easily severed. Even with my memories gone, my soul recognized him. My wolf knew her other half, no matter what magic tried to keep us apart. When Elena finally released me from the memory trance, I was sobbing uncontrollably, overwhelmed by the return of everything I'd lost. Years of love and pain and longing crashed over me like waves against a breaking shore. Easy, child, Elena murmured, her arms around me like a mother comforting her daughter. Let it all come back. Let yourself feel it. Why didn't you stop me? I gasped between sobs. When I went to the witches, why didn't you try to talk me out of it? Because you were in so much pain that I thought it might kill you, she said honestly. Your wolf was dying inside your chest. You weren't eating, weren't sleeping, weren't taking care of yourself. I thought perhaps forgetting would give you a chance to heal. And now? Now I see that some bonds are too strong to break, even with magic. She helped me to my feet, her ancient eyes, wise and sad. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? He'd rejected me to protect his pack, but now he was protecting me from the memories of his rejection, even though it meant carrying all that guilt and regret by himself. I'm going to go home, I said finally. And then, but the moon goddess had her own plans for mates who tried to cheat destiny. I found Damien pacing in the cabin's main room, like a caged wolf, when I returned. His head snapped up the moment I walked through the door, relief and anxiety warring in his expression. Where were you? He demanded, crossing the space between us in 3 long strides. You've been gone for hours. I was about to send out search parties. I remember, I said simply. He went completely still. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the crackling of logs in the fireplace. What do you remember? He asked carefully. The color drained from his face. Avalon, I remember that we were true mates, blessed by the moon goddess herself. My voice was steady, though my heart was racing. I remember that you chose your pack over me. He closed his eyes, pain etching deep lines around them. Yes, and I remember that you found me in the woods, because you were looking for me, not by chance. You've been searching for me ever since I disappeared. The simple admission hung in the air between us, loaded with years of regret and longing. "Why?" I asked. He opened his eyes and I saw everything in them. Love and guilt and desperate hope, all tangled together. Because rejecting you was the biggest mistake of my life. Because I've spent the last 3 years trying to find you. Trying to make things right. Because even though I chose duty over love once, I've regretted it every single day since. And when you found me with no memory of what happened, you decided not to tell me the truth. I decided to protect you from reliving the pain I'd caused. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. You were so broken when you left. Avalon, your wolf was barely functioning. When I found you in the woods and realized the witches had actually granted your wish to forget, I thought maybe it was for the best. For the best? I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. You thought it was best to let me live as a stranger to myself. I thought it was best to let you heal, he said quietly, without the weight of our history dragging you down. That wasn't your choice to make. You're right. He stepped closer, his voice raw with emotion. It wasn't, but I was terrified that if you remembered, you'd disappear again. And I couldn't. I couldn't lose you twice. I stared at him, this alpha who had once commanded armies, now standing before me, vulnerable and broken. The mate bond, now that my memories had returned, was singing between us like a live wire. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to close the distance, to forgive him, to accept the love I could see burning in his eyes. But the pain was there too, sharp and immediate, as fresh as if the rejection had happened yesterday. "Do you have any idea what it felt like?" I whispered, "standing in front of hundreds of people while you publicly rejected me?" "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Avalon. Sorry. Doesn't undo 3 years of thinking I was worthless. Sorry. Doesn't undo the humiliation, the shame, the feeling that even the moon goddess's blessing wasn't enough to make me worthy of love." Tears were streaming down his face now, but he didn't try to wipe them away. "You were always worthy. You are worthy. The rejection had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with my own cowardice. And now I know that a leader who can't honor sacred bonds isn't worth following. Now I know that love isn't a weakness. It's the only thing that gives strength meaning." He took another step closer, hope flickering in his eyes. "The war you were afraid I'd drag my pack into. It happened anyway, and without you at my side. Without the alliance that accepting our bond would have created, we barely survived." I felt my resolve wavering. The pain was still there, sharp and real, but underneath it was the deeper truth of what we'd been to each other. The love that had been so strong, I'd chosen oblivion over living without it. "What happened to the Thornfield pack?" I asked. "And your pack? Do they still oppose our bond? They'll accept me? They'll welcome you with open arms and probably throw a celebration that lasts a week." He reached out tentatively, his fingertips barely brushing my cheek. "If you'll have us. If you'll have me." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch despite myself. The mate bond was pulling at me, urging me to forgive, to forget, to accept the love that had never really died. But some wounds ran too deep for simple forgiveness. Disappointment flickered across his features. But he nodded. "I understand. Do you? Because I'm not the same person I was before the memory spell. I've lived 3 years as someone else, learned to be strong in different ways. The woman you rejected might have been willing to forgive and forget immediately. And the woman you are now?" I met his eyes steadily. "The woman I am now knows her own worth, and she's not going to settle for love that comes with conditions." Avalon thought losing her memory was the worst thing that could happen. She was about to learn how wrong she was. News of my return spread through the Blackwood pack like wildfire. By the next morning, there were wolves stationed at every entrance to Damien's territory, not as guards but as greeters. Word had gone out that their alpha's true mate had been found. and the pack's excitement was palpable even from a distance. "They want to meet you," Damien said over breakfast, his tone carefully neutral. "But I told them you needed time to recover from the memory restoration. They'll wait as long as you need." I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself apart from me even while being unfailingly polite. The conversation from the night before had left us in a strange limbo. Not enemies, but not quite reconciled either. Hope flared in his eyes before he could hide it. "Are you sure? Pack introductions can be overwhelming even under the best circumstances. I was an alpha's daughter before all this happened. Remember? I know how to handle pack politics." He nodded, something that might have been pride flickering across his features. "I'll arrange something small, just the inner circle to start." An hour later, we were sitting in the cabin's main room with 5 of the most important members of Blackwood Pack. I recognized the dynamic immediately. Damien's beta, his head enforcer, the pack's spiritual advisor, their healer, and the elder who spoke for the older generation. They were trying to hide it, but their nervousness was obvious. Here was their alpha's rejected mate, the woman whose absence had haunted him for 3 years. The last time they'd seen me, I'd been a heartbroken 20-year-old running away in tears. "Avalon Nightshade," said Marcus, Damien's beta. He was a big man with kind eyes and premature gray at his temples. "It's good to see you again." "Thank you," I replied carefully, though I should mention that my memories are complicated right now. I remember some things clearly, others not at all. "The important thing is that you're here," said Elena, the pack healer. Not to be confused with Elena Shadowmere. This woman was younger, with the gentle demeanor of someone who spent her life caring for others. "We've missed you." I felt a spark of surprise. "Missed me?" "We barely knew each other before, but we knew how important you were to our alpha," said the elder, a distinguished man named Thomas. "And we knew that in rejecting you, he'd made a terrible mistake." I glanced at Damien, who was studying his hands with intense concentration. "Did you really?" "Some of us did," Marcus admitted. "Not all. I'll be honest. There were those who thought political considerations outweighed personal ones. But after the war, after seeing what the rejection cost, both you and Damien, most of the pack came around." "The war," I repeated. "Tell me what really happened." For the next hour they painted a picture of the conflict I'd missed. How the Thornfield pack had grown increasingly aggressive after my rejection, seeing it as a sign of weakness. How they'd attacked Nightshade territory while I was still missing, triggering the very war Damien had tried to avoid. How both packs had suffered devastating losses before the fighting finally ended. "Your pack," I said quietly. "The Nightshade pack. What happened to them?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus exchanged glances with the others before answering. "They survived, but barely. Your father, Alpha Robert, he was killed in the final battle. Your mother took over as interim leader, but without you, he trailed off, the implication clear. They needed their heir." I finished. "And I was gone." "Your brother stepped up," Elena the healer said gently. "He's been doing his best, but he's young. The pack is struggling without strong alpha leadership." I felt a stab of guilt so sharp, it took my breath away. While I'd been hiding from my memories, my family had been fighting a war. My father had died, and I hadn't even been there to mourn him. "I need to go to them," I said, starting to rise. "Wait." Damien's voice was quiet, but commanding. "Avalon, think about this. If you show up without warning, it could destabilize everything your brother has built." "He's right," Thomas added. "Pack leadership transitions are delicate. Your sudden return could be seen as a challenge to your brother's authority." I sank back into my chair, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. 3 years of lost time had created ripple effects. I was only beginning to understand. "Let me reach out to your mother first," Damien said. "Explain the situation. Let her know you're safe and recovering." Then we can arrange a proper meeting." The word "we" didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. Despite everything between us, he was still thinking like my mate, still trying to protect and support me. "And if I decide I don't want to return to pack life at all?" I asked, testing the waters. "If I choose to remain a lone wolf?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I saw shock on several faces, concern on others. "That would be your right," Damien said carefully. "But it would be a waste of your gifts. You were born to lead, Avalon. Running away from that calling won't change who you are. I ran away once before. Remember? When things got too painful to bear. And look what that cost everyone," he replied, not unkindly but with brutal honesty. "Your pack needed you. Your family needed you. Hell, I needed you, even if I was too stubborn and proud to admit it." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. My choice to forget hadn't just affected me. It had left a void that others had struggled to fill. "I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago," I said finally. "The woman you rejected might have been content to be a political pawn, to accept whatever scraps of affection were offered. The woman I am now expects more." "What do you expect?" Marcus asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I thought about it for a moment, trying to articulate feelings that were still forming. Respect, partnership, the understanding that love isn't something you set aside when it becomes inconvenient. "And if Damien can offer those things?" Elena asked gently. I looked at my mate, this man who had broken my heart, and then spent 3 years trying to put the pieces back together. There was love in his eyes. Yes, but also understanding. He wasn't the same person he'd been 3 years ago either. "Then maybe we can find a way forward," I said. "But it won't be the same relationship we had before. That innocent, trusting love is gone. If we're going to rebuild, it has to be on new terms." Damien nodded slowly. "What terms?" "Equal partnership in all things. No more choosing duty over love, but also no more hiding behind love when tough decisions need to be made. Transparency, always. And patience, while I figure out who I want to be now that I remember who I was." "And the mate bond?" That was the question that had been hovering in the background of every conversation. The moon goddess had blessed us as true mates. But did that blessing still hold after rejection, memory loss, and 3 years of separation? "I can still feel it," I admitted. "Can you?" "Then we work with it," I decided. Not against it, but not as slaves to it either. We choose each other because we want to, not because magic says we have to. The pack members exchanged glances, and I could see approval in their faces. This was what they'd wanted. Their alpha happy, their pack stable, their future secure. But I had one more condition. "There's something else?" I said. "If we do this, if we accept the mate bond and lead together, it can't just be about combining packs for political advantage. It has to be about creating something better." "What do you mean?" Thomas asked. "I mean, we use our strength to protect the weaker packs, not to dominate them. We become leaders who bring stability to the region, not just to our own territories. We prove that mate bonds make us stronger, not weaker." Damien was staring at me with something that looked like awe. "You want to create a confederation, a network of allied packs working together, instead of fighting for resources. I want to make sure what happened to us, the war, the losses, the pain, never happens to anyone else." "It's ambitious," Marcus said slowly. "Some of the other alphas won't like the idea of cooperation over competition." "Then we'll convince them," I said simply. "With strength, with diplomacy, with whatever it takes." "And if they refuse?" I felt my wolf stir, felt the alpha power that had been dormant during my memory loss finally awakening. "Then they'll learn that the Nightshade Blackwood alliance isn't something to be trifled with." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Thomas began to chuckle. "Oh yes," he said, grinning at Damien. "She's definitely back." Yet, with each recovered memory, The line between love and betrayal grew impossibly thin. That evening, Damien and I walked alone through the forest, the packhouse conversations still echoing in our minds. The mate bond hummed between us, stronger now that my memories had returned, but still fragile in the wake of everything that had happened. "Are you really willing to try again?" he asked as we reached the clearing where Elena Shadowmere had restored my memories. "Or are you just saying what everyone wants to hear?" I appreciated his directness. The old Damien might have danced around the question, afraid of pushing too hard. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Part of me wants to forgive you, to accept that we both made mistakes and move forward. But another part," I trailed off, trying to find the right words. "Another part still hurts. Another part doesn't trust you not to do it again." I sat down on a fallen log, looking up at the stars beginning to appear through the canopy. What happens the next time choosing love conflicts with choosing duty? What happens when your pack's needs and my pack's needs don't align perfectly? He sat beside me, careful to leave space between us. "I'd choose love. I'd choose you. Every time." That's easy to say now, when there's no conflict to test it. "Then let's create one." I turned to stare at him. "What? Let's test it. Right now. Give me a scenario where love and duty conflict, and let me prove to you that I've learned from my mistakes." I studied his face in the moonlight, looking for signs of uncertainty or hesitation. Finding none, I decided to take him up on the challenge. "All right, here's your test." I took a deep breath, then presented him with the worst-case scenario I could imagine. "Let's say we accept the mate bond and unite our packs. Everything goes well for a while. But then the pack elders come to you with concerns. They think I'm too aggressive, too willing to risk pack resources to help outsiders. They want you to choose a different Luna, someone more traditional." Damien didn't hesitate for even a second. "I'd tell them that they can accept you as their Luna, or they can find a new alpha. No discussion, no compromise, no political maneuvering. Even if it meant civil war within your own pack? Even then." His voice was steady, sure. "Avalon, I spent 3 years learning to live with the consequences of choosing duty over love. I won't make that mistake again. And if the council threatened to leave, to take their families and join other packs, then I'd wish them well and help them pack." He turned to face me fully. "A pack held together by fear isn't worth leading. I'd rather have 10 wolves who believe in what we're building than 100 who stay only because they feel obligated." The conviction in his voice was absolute. This wasn't the uncertain young alpha who had rejected me 3 years ago. This was a leader who had been tested by loss and emerged stronger for it. "What changed?" I asked. "What made you realize that love was more important than politics?" He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. "Losing you nearly destroyed me. Not just emotionally, though. That was bad enough. But practically, I second-guessed every decision, questioned every choice, because the one time it had mattered most, I'd chosen wrong." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "And you think accepting me as your mate will fix that?" "I think having the other half of my soul at my side will make me a better leader than I've ever been. Not because you complete me. I've learned to be whole on my own. But because you challenge me to be better than I thought I could be." The words were exactly what I needed to hear. Not declarations of desperate need or romantic dependency, but a mature understanding of what partnership really meant. "There's something else," I said. "Something I need you to understand about the woman I've become. Tell me, the old Avalon might have been willing to support your decisions even when she disagreed with them. The new Avalon won't. If I think you're wrong, I'll say so. In private, in public, in front of the entire pack. If necessary." A slow smile spread across his face. "Good. The last thing I need is a mate who tells me what I want to hear instead of what I need to hear, even if it undermines your authority. Especially then. A leader surrounded by yes men is a leader headed for disaster." He leaned closer, hope flickering in his storm-gray eyes. "Does this mean you're willing to try, to give us another chance?" I considered the question carefully. The rational part of my mind cataloged all the reasons to say no. The pain of rejection, the 3 years of lost time, the complexity of uniting two damaged packs. But my heart, my wolf, and something deeper than logic were all singing the same song. This was my mate, my other half, the person the moon goddess herself had chosen for me. "I'd like that," he said softly, "getting to know the woman you've become. And you'll have to prove yourself, not just with words but with actions. I need to see that you really have changed, that you won't abandon me the next time things get difficult." "I understand." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the next part. "And there's one more thing. I want to go see my family tomorrow, my pack, my mother, my brother. I need to face what I left behind." Damien nodded. "I'll drive you." "Actually," I said, feeling a familiar stirring in my chest, "I think it's time I tried shifting again. I want to run home on 4 legs, the way I should have 3 years ago." As if responding to my words, my wolf surged forward in my mind, no longer hiding behind walls of trauma and lost memory. She was strong, eager, ready to be whole again. "Are you sure you're ready?" Damien asked, concern evident in his voice. Instead of answering with words, I stood up and began to undress, folding my clothes carefully on the fallen log. Damien turned away, giving me privacy despite the mate bond between us. I closed my eyes and reached for my wolf, no longer afraid of what I might find. She came to me easily, like a dear friend returning from a long journey. The shift was painless, natural, like breathing after holding my breath for years. One moment I was standing on 2 legs, the next I was on 4, my senses exploding with new clarity. I was larger than I remembered. My coat the pure silver white of moonlight on fresh snow. The wolf in me stretched, testing her limbs, then turned to look at my mate. Damien had shifted as well, his wolf, a massive black creature with the same storm-gray eyes as his human form. He approached carefully, head lowered in respect, and when I didn't retreat, he nuzzled my neck gently. "Ready to go home?" His voice in my mind was warm, familiar. "Right, ready," I replied, and together we began to run. But returning home would bring revelations that would test their newfound bond beyond anything they had imagined. The Nightshade territory was smaller than I remembered. Damien and I crested the hill that overlooked the pack village just as dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Below us, the collection of houses and buildings that had once seemed like the center of the world looked diminished somehow, as if the intervening years had stolen some of its vitality. "Are you ready for this?" Damien asked through our mental link. "No," I replied honestly. "But I'm going anyway." We shifted back to human form, at the territory boundary, where the scent markers proclaimed this land belonged to the Nightshade pack. I dressed quickly, my hands shaking slightly with nerves. While Damien kept watch, the first pack member to spot us was a young warrior I didn't recognize, probably someone who had come of age during my absence. His eyes widened when he saw me, and I watched understanding dawn across his features. "Alpha Avalon," he breathed, dropping to one knee in the traditional gesture of submission to pack royalty. "Just Avalon," I corrected gently. "I'm not your alpha, but you're the heir." "I'm a lot of things," I said. "Let's start with daughter who's come home to see her family." He nodded, still clearly overwhelmed, and gestured toward the pack house. "Real mother is in the morning council meeting. I'll announce myself," I said. "Thank you." Damien and I walked through the village in silence, past houses I remembered from childhood, past the training grounds where I'd learned to fight, past the memorial stones where fallen pack members were honored. I paused at the newest stone, my heart clenching as I read my father's name carved in granite. Robert Nightshade. Alpha, father, protector of the pack. I touched the stone gently, wishing I'd been there for the funeral, for the mourning period, for all the rituals that help packs process loss. Now I think he would have understood why you made the choice you did, even if he wouldn't have agreed with it. We continued toward the pack house, and I could feel the growing awareness of my presence rippling through the territory. Wolves were excellent at sensing when something significant was happening, and my return after 3 years of absence definitely qualified. The pack house was a large rustic building at the heart of the territory, built to accommodate meetings, celebrations, and the administrative business of pack life. I could hear voices from the main council chamber as we approached. My mother's voice, my brother's, and several others I recognized. I paused at the door, suddenly uncertain. What did you say to family? You'd abandoned. How did you explain choosing oblivion over responsibility? You don't have to explain anything, Damien said, reading my hesitation. You just have to be here now. I nodded, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. The council chamber fell completely silent. As I stepped inside, 8 pairs of eyes turned toward me, and I saw shock, joy, confusion, and a dozen other emotions flicker across familiar faces. My mother, Luna Sarah Nightshade, was the first to recover. She rose from her seat at the head of the table, the Alpha's seat. I realized with a start and crossed the room in 3 quick strides to pull me into a fierce embrace. My daughter, she whispered against my hair, and I felt her tears soaking into my shirt. My lost daughter. I'm sorry, I said, the words inadequate, but necessary. I'm so sorry, Mom. You're here now, she replied, pulling back to study my face. That's what matters. Over her shoulder, I saw my brother Marcus, not to be confused with Damien's bitter, standing frozen by his chair. He was 23 now, no longer the gangly teenager I remembered, but a full-grown alpha in his own right. The resemblance to our father was striking, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of burdens carried too young. Avalon, his voice was carefully controlled. We heard rumors that you'd been found, but you didn't believe them? I didn't dare hope, he admitted. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, where were you? When Dad died, when the pack was falling apart, when we needed you most, where were you? The question hung in the air like an accusation, not cruel, but honest, in the way that only family could be. I was hiding, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. From pain, from responsibility, from the truth of what I'd lost. I used magic to erase my memories, rather than face what my life had become. The mate bond rejection, my mother said, understanding immediately. She looked at Damien, who had remained near the door, respectfully not intruding on the family reunion. And you? Have you come to try again? Only if Avalon wants me to, Damien replied. I'm here as her support, not as someone with claims on her future. Good answer, said Elder Patricia, one of my father's old advisors. Though I have to ask, what's changed? What makes you think you won't hurt her again? Experience, Damien said simply. 3 years of living with the consequences of my choice. 3 years of watching what happened when I chose politics over love. And what had happened? Marcus asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. War anyway. Loss anyway. Pain for everyone involved. Damien stepped forward slightly. The thing I was trying to prevent by rejecting the mate bond happened regardless, and without the alliance that accepting it would have created, both our packs suffered unnecessarily. So you're here now because it's politically convenient? The challenge came from Betta James, my father's old second-in-command. I'm here because I love her, Damien said without hesitation. Politics are secondary. If Avalon told me right now that she wanted nothing to do with me but still needed help rebuilding her pack, I'd offer every resource at my disposal with no strings attached. And if she chose someone else as her mate, the pain that flashed across Damien's face was answer enough. But he spoke anyway. Then I'd wish her happiness, and spend the rest of my life regretting my mistakes. My mother studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You've grown up. Losing the most important person in your life has a way of doing that. Indeed it does. She turned back to me. The question is, daughter, what do you want? Your brother has done an admirable job leading the pack, but everyone knows he's holding the position in trust. The choice of what happens next belongs to you. All eyes were on me, waiting for the decision that would shape not just my future, but the future of the entire pack. I looked around the room at these people who had helped raise me, who had grieved my absence, who had carried on without me. I want to come home, I said finally, but not as the person I was before. I'm different now, older, more cautious, less willing to accept things just because they've always been that way. What does that mean for pack leadership? Marcus asked. It means we lead together. If you're willing, co-alphas, sharing the responsibility until you're ready to take it on fully. I looked at him seriously. You've earned the right to rule, Marcus. I won't take that away from you just because of an accident of birth order. Relief flooded his face. You mean that? I mean that, though I do want to be involved in rebuilding, in making sure our pack is strong enough to stand on its own. And your mate? My mother asked, glancing meaningfully at Damien. We're taking things slowly, I said, learning each other again. There's a lot to work through. Time we have, Damien said. I'm not going anywhere. Elder Patricia cleared her throat. If I may, there's something you should know about the current political situation. The power vacuum left by your disappearance, and the war has created instability throughout the region. Several smaller packs are looking for strong leadership to ally with, and having you back, especially if you're willing to work with Alpha Blackwood, could provide the stability everyone needs. But there are also those who would see your return as a threat to their own ambitions. I felt a familiar stirring of purpose in my chest. This was what I'd been meant for, not just personal happiness, but the responsibility of leadership. The chance to make a real difference. Then I guess we'd better get to work, I said. But some enemies had been waiting 3 years for exactly this moment. The attack came 2 weeks later, just as Damien and I were beginning to find our rhythm as partners again. We'd been taking things slowly, as promised. Long walks through both territories, careful conversations about our future, occasional moments of physical contact that reminded us both why the moon goddess had chosen us as mates. The attraction was still there, stronger than ever, but we were building on a foundation of friendship and respect rather than just passion. The integration of our packs was going equally well. Marcus proved to be a natural diplomat, finding ways to blend Nightshade and Blackwood traditions without favoring one over the other. My mother had taken to advising both packs on matters of law and justice, her wisdom welcomed by everyone involved. We were, for the first time in years, genuinely happy, which was probably why we were unprepared for the coordinated assault that hit both territories simultaneously. I was in the Blackwood pack house, discussing security arrangements with Marcus and Damien's beta, when the first howls of alarm echoed through the forest. We looked up from our papers, instantly alert, as the sounds of battle reached our enhanced hearing. Multiple breach points, Marcus said grimly, his alpha senses cataloging the threats. At least 3 groups, maybe 4. Who would be stupid enough to attack both our packs at once? I wondered aloud. Then Damien burst through the door, his face grim with recognition. The Thornfield survivors. They've regrouped. My blood ran cold. The Thornfield pack had supposedly been scattered after their defeat 3 years ago, but apparently some of them had been planning revenge. And what better target than the newly reunited Nightshade Blackwood alliance? How many? I asked, already reaching for the weapons kept in the council chamber. Unknown. They're using guerrilla tactics, hitting multiple targets to divide our attention. Damien handed me a silver-bladed knife, the metal humming with power. They want chaos, not a direct confrontation. Then let's give them one, I said grimly. The battle that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced before. These weren't honorable pack challenges or territorial disputes. This was warfare, pure and simple, designed to cause maximum damage with minimum risk to the attackers. The Thornfield survivors had learned from their previous defeat. Instead of a frontal assault, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking at vulnerable targets before melting back into the forest. The pack school, the elder care facility, the homes of families with young children. They were trying to break our spirit by targeting our most precious assets. But they had miscalculated. Instead of dividing us, their tactics only strengthened the bond between our packs. Blackwood wolves threw themselves into defending Nightshade territory, and Nightshade wolves did the same for Blackwood lands. I found myself fighting alongside Damien's enforcers, protecting a group of children who had been caught in the open when the attack began. My wolf was fully present now, lending me speed and strength that I used to devastating effect against our enemies. "Behind you," Marcus shouted, and I spun to see a massive Thornfield warrior lunging toward me with claws extended. I dropped low, letting his momentum carry him over me, then came up with my blade sliding between his ribs. He dropped without a sound, but there were more behind him. "How many of these bastards are there?" I panted, back to back with Damien as we faced a new wave of attackers. "More than there should be," he replied grimly. "Someone's been recruiting from other packs, building a coalition against us." That was troubling news. If the Thornfield survivors had convinced other groups to join their cause, this could be more than just a revenge raid. This could be the beginning of a full-scale war. The fighting continued for hours, our forces gradually pushing the attackers back, but taking casualties in the process. As dawn broke over the battlefield, the surviving Thornfield wolves finally retreated, leaving behind destruction and the promise of more violence to come. "Damage report," I called to the assembled pack members as we gathered in the Blackwood meeting hall. 7 wounded, none critical, reported Elena, the pack healer. "Property damage is significant, but repairable. They targeted infrastructure, the communications center, the power grid, the food storage facilities." "Which means this was just the beginning," Damien said, voice heavy with exhaustion and worry. "They're probing our defenses, testing our response times. Then we need to be ready for whatever comes next," I said. "Double the patrols, reinforce the vulnerable points, and send word to our allies. If someone's building a coalition against us, we need to build one of our own." "Already on it," said Thomas, Damien's elder advisor. "I've been in contact with 6 neighboring packs who are concerned about the instability. They're willing to discuss mutual defense agreements." "Good. But first, we need to figure out who's behind this." I looked around the room at the faces of both packs, seeing determination mixed with exhaustion. The original Thornfield leadership is dead. Someone new is organizing this. Someone with resources and connections. And someone with a personal grudge against our alliance. Damien added, "This isn't just about territory or resources. This is about punishing us for choosing love over politics." The implications of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. If our enemies were targeting us specifically because of the mate bond, then our relationship wasn't just personal anymore. It was a political statement that others were willing to kill to contradict. "So what do we do?" Marcus asked. I looked at Damien, seeing my own determination reflected in his storm-gray eyes. 3 years ago, external pressure had driven us apart, but we weren't the same people we'd been then. "We fight," I said simply, "together. And we show everyone that mate bonds don't make us weak. They make us stronger than anyone imagined. Even if it means war, especially if it means war. Because this time, we're not fighting alone." But their greatest enemy wasn't who they expected, and the betrayal would come from within. The second attack never came. For 3 weeks, we maintained heightened security, doubled patrols, and coordinated with allied packs to create an intelligence network that covered hundreds of square miles. But the Thornfield survivors seemed to have vanished as completely as if the earth had swallowed them whole. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop. "They're planning something bigger," I said to Damien, as we walked the perimeter of the Blackwood territory. "This quiet isn't natural." "I know, but until they make their move, all we can do is stay prepared." We'd been doing more than just staying prepared. The weeks since the attack had brought our packs closer together than anyone had thought possible. Blackwood and Nightshade wolves now worked together as seamlessly as if they'd been raised in the same territory. More personally, Damien and I had grown closer as well. The shared crisis had stripped away the last of our careful walls, forcing us to rely on each other in ways that went beyond just physical attraction or nostalgic affection. I was beginning to believe we might actually have a chance at building something real and lasting. The revelation arrived in the form of intercepted communications, coded messages that our intelligence network had managed to decode after weeks of patient work. The contents were devastating in their simplicity. The attacks were coordinated from inside our own territories, Damien said, his face pale as he read the translated messages. "Someone in one of our packs has been feeding information to the Thornfield survivors." I felt sick. Someone we trust. Someone with access to our security protocols, our patrol schedules, our emergency procedures. He set the papers down with shaking hands. "Someone who's been in our strategy meetings." The list of suspects was terrifyingly short. Only a handful of people had access to all the information that had been leaked. Pack betas, elder advisors, family members. "We can't let this divide us," I said, though I could already feel paranoia creeping into my thoughts. "That's probably what they want, to turn us against each other. But we can't ignore it either. As long as there's a spy in our midst, nothing we plan is secure." We called an emergency meeting of the inner circle, only the most trusted members of both packs, the people whose loyalty had never been questioned. But as I looked around the room at familiar faces, I couldn't shake the feeling that one of them was an enemy wearing a friend's face. "We have a problem," Damien began, then laid out what we'd discovered about the intelligence leak. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Shock, denial, anger, and growing suspicion, as people began eyeing each other warily. "It has to be someone from Blackwood Pack," said Elder Patricia from the Nightshade side. "They're the ones with the most detailed knowledge of our joint operations." "Or someone from Nightshade who resents having to ally with their former enemies," countered Thomas from the Blackwood delegation. "Enough," I said sharply before the accusations could escalate. "This is exactly what our enemies want us turning on each other, instead of focusing on the real threat. But we have to face facts," Marcus said quietly. "Someone in this room, or someone very close to someone in this room, has been betraying us for weeks." The weight of that statement settled over the gathering like a funeral shroud. These were people who had known each other for years, who had fought together, bled together, trusted each other with their lives. "There is a way to know for certain," said Elena Shadowmere, the elder witch who had restored my memories. She'd remained largely in the background during pack business, but now she stepped forward with grave purpose. "Truth magic. It's invasive and unpleasant, but it would identify the traitor definitively." "You're talking about magical interrogation," Damien's beta Marcus said slowly, forcing people to reveal their deepest thoughts and loyalties. "And if someone refuses the truth magic?" asked Elder Patricia. "Then you have your answer," Elena said simply. The debate that followed was heated and painful. Using magic to invade the minds of trusted allies went against everything pack culture stood for, but allowing a traitor to continue operating could cost lives, possibly all their lives. In the end, it was my mother who settled the matter. One by one, the others followed her lead. Elena's truth magic was exactly as invasive and unpleasant as she'd warned. I felt it when my turn came, like icy fingers rifling through my thoughts and memories. But it was also absolutely thorough. 20 minutes later, 19 people had been cleared of suspicion. The 20th person, Beta James, my father's old second in command, was nowhere to be found. He slipped out during the debate, Marcus reported after a quick search of the building. No one saw him go. Then we have our traitor, Damien said grimly. The question is, how much damage has he done? That question was answered an hour later, when scouts brought word of massive troop movements in the surrounding territories. At least 200 wolves, maybe more, reported Sarah, one of our best trackers. They're not trying to hide anymore. This looks like preparation for an all-out assault. 200? Marcus looked stunned. How did they assemble that many fighters without us knowing? Because someone has been feeding them intelligence for weeks, I said bitterly. James knew our patrol routes, our communication schedules, our blind spots. He could have been guiding enemy movements right under our noses. The real question is why? My mother said quietly. James served your father faithfully for 20 years. What could have turned him against us now? Maybe it wasn't about us at all, Damien said, realization dawning in his eyes. Maybe it was about the Alliance. Some of the older generation never forgave me for the initial rejection. To them, accepting me now might look like weakness. You think he's trying to break up the Alliance by getting us all killed? I asked. I think he's trying to break up the Alliance by proving that it makes us vulnerable. If this attack succeeds, if people die because we trusted the wrong person, it validates every argument against cross-pack cooperation. The cynicism was breathtaking, but it made sense. James had always been a traditionalist, someone who believed packs should remain separate and independent. Our successful alliance threatened everything he'd ever believed about werewolf society. Based on the troop positions, probably 6 hours until they reach our borders, Sarah reported. Maybe less if they move fast. 6 hours to prepare for a battle against overwhelming odds, with compromised intelligence and no element of surprise. Damien ran a hand through his hair, the stress evident in every line of his body. I don't suppose we could evacuate the non-combatants and retreat to more defensible positions, and let them claim our territory. Marcus shook his head. That's not just losing a battle, that's losing our identity as packs. Better to lose territory than to lose lives, I pointed out. We can always rebuild. She was right. This wasn't just about our survival. It was about setting a precedent for how supernatural communities would interact going forward. Run now, and we'd be running for the rest of our lives. Wards to strengthen our defenses, confusion spells to disrupt their coordination, healing magic for the wounded. The old witch replied promptly, but I can't work miracles. Magic can tip the balance, but it can't overcome hopeless odds. What about our allies? The packs we've been building relationships with. Thomas, Damien's elder advisor, looked grim. I've sent word, but the nearest ones are 6 hours away. We'll be fighting alone, at least initially. 200 against how many of us? 87 combat-capable wolves, Marcus answered after a quick mental calculation. 93 if we count the older teenagers. So we're outnumbered more than 2 to 1. I looked around the room at the faces of people I'd grown to love and respect over the past few weeks. Anyone want to change their mind about staying and fighting? The silence was answer enough. All right then, Damien said, stepping forward to stand beside me. Let's get to work. But the final battle would reveal truths about the mate bond that no one had expected. But in the end, it came down to wolves, fighting wolves, and the math was brutally simple. I stood with Damien at the center of our defensive line, watching the tree line for the first sign of enemy movement. Around us, the combined warriors of both packs waited with grim determination, knowing they were facing impossible odds but refusing to back down. Whatever happens, Damien said quietly, I want you to know that these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you again, building something real together, it was worth everything. Don't talk like we're about to die, I replied, though I could feel the mate bond humming with the same desperate energy. We're going to get through this. And if we don't, I turned to look at him, this man who had broken my heart and then spent years trying to put it back together. The morning light caught the silver in his storm-gray eyes, and I felt my wolf stir with protective fury at the thought of losing him now. Then we go down fighting, side by side, the way we were always meant to. He smiled, the expression both sad and achingly beautiful. I love you, Avalon Nightshade. I love you too, Damien Blackwood. The words felt like a vow, a promise, a prayer, all rolled into one. Whatever mistakes we'd made, whatever pain we'd caused each other, this moment was pure and perfect and true. Then the first howls echoed through the forest, and there was no more time for words. The Thornfield survivors came at us in waves, organized and disciplined in a way that spoke of military training. These weren't the ragged remnants of a defeated pack. They were a coordinated force with clear objectives and tactical knowledge. James had taught them well. The first wave hit our outer defenses like a hammer blow, testing our strength and resolve. Elena's magical wards held, channeling the attackers into kill zones where our defenders could bring superior firepower to bear. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming. Second wave incoming from the east, Marcus shouted, his voice carrying over the sounds of battle. They're trying to flank us. I shifted to wolf form without conscious thought, my human tactics giving way to lupine instincts. In this shape, I was faster, stronger, deadlier. My silver-white coat gleamed like moonlight as I bounded toward the eastern approach, ready to meet the flanking force head-on. The enemy wolves were larger than I'd expected, and their coordination was flawless. Someone had been training them specifically for this assault, teaching them how to fight as a unit rather than as individual pack warriors. But they hadn't been training to fight against true mates. Damien appeared beside me in wolf form, his massive black shape moving in perfect synchronization with my smaller silver one. We fought as if we'd been partnering for years, anticipating each other's moves, covering each other's blind spots, becoming something greater than the sum of our parts. The mate bond that had once been a source of pain was now our greatest weapon. Through it, I could feel Damien's intentions before he acted, could coordinate my attacks with his in ways that left our enemies confused and off balance. But even working together, even with the advantage of familiar territory and prepared positions, we were slowly being overwhelmed. Fall back to the secondary line. Damien's mental voice carried clearly through our bond. We can't hold this position much longer. We were losing. That's when the howls began echoing from the western ridge. Not the battle cries of enemies, but the coordinated songs of allies arriving at speed. Riverside Pack, someone shouted. Mountain Stone Pack. They came. The cavalry had arrived just in time. 6 allied packs responding to our call for aid with everything they could muster. The sight of fresh wolves pouring down the mountainside was like a shot of adrenaline to our defenders. The tide of battle began to turn. What had been a desperate last stand became a fierce counterattack. As our reinforcements struck the enemy's exposed flanks, the Thornfield survivors found themselves caught between our defensive positions and the Allied forces, their numerical advantage suddenly meaningless. The fighting continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the enemy forces began to break and scatter, their coordinated assault dissolving into chaotic retreat. When the last enemy wolf disappeared into the distant tree line, an exhausted cheer went up from the combined Allied forces. We'd won, against all odds, through courage and determination, and the bonds of friendship that connected our communities. But the victory came with a price. Casualty report, I called as we shifted back to human form and began assessing the damage. 12 wounded, 3 critically, Elena reported, her healing magic already working on the most serious injuries. Property damage is extensive, but repairable, and she hesitated, her face grave. And what? Vita James was found among the enemy dead. Apparently, he'd been fighting alongside the Thornfield survivors when the Allied packs hit their flank. I felt a complex mix of emotions at that news. Sadness for a man who had served my family faithfully for years, anger at his betrayal, and something that might have been pity for someone who'd been so consumed by ideology that he died fighting against his own people. He made his choice, Damien said quietly, reading my expression. We all have to live with the consequences of our choices. Speaking of choices, said Alpha Rivera, of the Riverside Pack, as she approached our position. I think it's time we talked about formalizing this alliance. What happened here today proves that cooperation makes us all stronger. Over the next few hours, as we treated the wounded and cleaned up the battlefield, the foundation of what would become the Northwestern Pack Alliance was laid. 6 packs, united not by conquest or coercion, but by mutual respect and shared values. It was everything I'd dreamed of when I'd first proposed the idea. A network of allied communities working together to create stability and security for everyone. So what now? Damien asked, as we watched the sun set over our combined territories. Where do we go from here? Always together, I promised. 1 year later, the mating ceremony was held in the same clearing where Elena Shadowmere had restored my memories. But this time the space was filled with representatives from 11 allied packs, all gathered to witness the formal acceptance of a bond that had already been tested by time and trial. Terrified, I admitted, not of marrying Damien, I'm sure about that part, but of everything that comes after, leading the alliance, managing the politics, trying to live up to everyone's expectations. The secret, she said with a smile, is not to try to live up to anyone's expectations but your own. You and Damien have already proven that your love makes you stronger. Trust in that. Through the windows of the pack house where I was getting ready, I could see wolves from across the region, gathering in the ceremonial space. The diversity was remarkable. Mountain packs and river packs, forest dwellers and plains runners, all united by shared values and mutual respect. It's time, Marcus said from the doorway. My brother had grown into his role as alpha of the Nightshade Pack, with grace and wisdom, becoming the kind of leader our father would have been proud of. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders and walked out to meet my destiny. You look beautiful, he said as I joined him, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed silence of the gathered packs. You clean up pretty well yourself, I replied, earning chuckles from the audience. The ceremony itself was a blend of traditions from both our packs, officiated by Elena Shadowmere and blessed by representatives of the moon goddess herself. We spoke vows that went beyond personal commitment, promising not just to love and support each other, but to use our bond in service of the greater good. When we exchanged rings, simple bands of silver inscribed with runes of protection and fidelity, the mate bond flared between us with such intensity that several people in the front rows gasped in wonder. By the power of the moon goddess, by the blessing of your packs, and by the strength of your own commitment, I pronounce you mated for life, Elena declared. May your love bring peace to the region and stability to all who look to you for leadership. The kiss that sealed our union tasted like forever and starlight and coming home as the celebration continued around us. Music and dancing and the joyful chaos of 11 packs partying together. Damien and I slipped away for a few moments of quiet. Any regrets? He asked as we stood on the ridge, overlooking our combined territories. I considered the question seriously. The past year had been challenging in ways I never could have anticipated. Politics were complicated, leadership was exhausting, and trying to balance the needs of multiple communities required constant compromise and negotiation. But it had also been deeply fulfilling. We'd prevented 3 territorial conflicts through diplomacy, established trade relationships that benefited everyone involved, and created a sense of security that allowed smaller packs to thrive without fear. No regrets, I said finally, though I reserve the right to complain loudly when the council meetings run too long. Damien laughed, the sound rich and warm in the evening air. I'll hold you to that. Good, Someone needs to keep me honest. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out over lands that were finally at peace. The alliance was working, the pacts were thriving, and despite all the challenges we'd faced, love had proven stronger than politics, fear, or the mistakes of the past. "I love you," Damien said softly. "Not because the moon goddess chose us for each other, but because you're brave and stubborn and brilliant, and you make me want to be a better man every single day." "I love you too," I replied. "For all the same reasons. Plus a few more I'll tell you about later when we're alone. Is that a promise?" "That's a promise." He pulled me closer, and as we kissed under the light of the full moon, I felt the contentment of a story completed, a destiny fulfilled, a love that had survived everything the world could throw at it. We'd forgotten each other once, lost in the pain of rejection and the emptiness of magical amnesia. But memory had returned, trust had been rebuilt, and love had proven stronger than any spell. Some bonds, once forged in the heart, could never truly be broken. Even when we forgot everything else, we remembered each other. And that, in the end, was enough. I woke up with no memory of who I was. Except for one thing, I knew his face. Sometimes the greatest love stories are about finding each other twice. Once in the beginning when everything feels possible, and again after loss and pain and growth. When love becomes a choice rather than just a feeling. In the end, Avalon learned that forgetting didn't erase love. It just gave her the chance to choose it again, stronger and wiser than before.